What's up, Weirdo? Shade Tree Surgeon here, up here at Bert's Barracuda in Clearwater, and today I'm comparing two bikes that ostensibly are competitors, but to me at least, they're insanely different motorcycles for two bikes that are supposed to be going head to head. These are both used bikes here at Bert's. I could do this with new bikes if I wanted to, but when I come up here, I'm usually in the market for used bikes, so that's what I test. We've got an Indian Challenger right here, and a Harley Davidson Road Glide, both in their very own specific shades of red. You guys know me, when I do reviews, it's less about technical facts and features and spec sheets and more about how the motorcycle makes me feel. Not just feel when I sit on it and I twist the throttle, but how does it make me feel when I look at it? Because you're going to spend a lot of time hopefully looking over your shoulder at your motorcycle when you walk away from it, because if you don't, you bought the wrong bike. And as I was walking around here at Bert's today, I was looking at these two bikes sitting not too far away from each other, realizing that someone might be coming up here trying to make a decision between these two used bikes, and I will tell you, to me, they're very, very, very different. In fact, besides some like overarching generalities, they have very little in common. But that's just what I would say personally about it. Let's go ahead and start with the heart of any motorcycle, the engine. And once again, we're not comparing statistics here, just what you can see. I mean, a few statistics, let's be honest here. Right off the bat, you have Indian being very unapologetic about this engine being liquid cooled. There are plenty of motorcycle engines throughout the 80s and 90s that were liquid cooled but still had heat sinks. Now, sometimes these heat sinks were because they had small radiators, so it was a combination of air cooling and liquid cooling, but a lot of them, especially ones that were trying to look like Harley Davidson, they just had those heat sinks on them as more of a cosmetic thing to make them look like a Harley Davidson instead of an engineering purpose. Now, while this does have some small heat sinks here around the head, which I don't know if these are cosmetic or these are engineered, I assume since they're only on the heads that they probably serve a purpose and act as some sort of heat sink cooling mechanism, because the heads usually need more cooling than everything else, just like with Harley's touring models that introduce liquid cooling just on the heads. While I'm not the biggest fan of how this engine looks, I don't hate it either. I will say what I really like about it is that it's not making any apologies for what it is, and it's not pretending to be something else. Even though a lot of what Indian does is based around being a competitor to Harley and not being their own thing, which of course is a catch-22. How can you be your own thing when you exist as a competitor? Regardless, what I'm saying is I like that this engine has its own unique style, isn't trying to be anything else. This is an Indian Challenger's engine, and it's not any other motorcycle's engine at all. They could have very easily put heat sinks all over this and made it look just like a Harley engine and really appeal to that market, but they didn't. They made it look like this. They made it look like a modern engine and a modern touring bike, which makes me feel like this is more of a Honda than a Harley Davidson. And that won't be the last time I make that comparison, because believe it or not, this motorcycle reminds me more of a Goldwing than a Harley. But let's move over to the Harley Davidson. You know it, you love it, or maybe you hate it. It's covered in chrome. It's instantaneously recognizable. The Harley Davidson engine, the V-twin, it's just associated with Harley Davidson. It's hard for anybody to do a V-twin in this configuration, engine, and have it not get compared to Harley Davidson. It's been done, but it's very hard to do. The Milwaukee 8 looks like the twin cam, looks like the Evo, looks like the shovel head. Well, the Evo shovel head anyway. This Milwaukee 8, the most modern engine that they produce, still looks like an old engine. The Indian doesn't look old, this looks old. Now, if you were to peel back the skin and look underneath at what it's hiding, it's not old, it's brand new, and it has plenty of technological advances in it, but it looks old. And of course, being air-cooled, I say some technological advances, but not all of them, and nowhere near what the Indian has. This engine looks like it exists separate from the motorcycle, and while before I'm sure that was more of a necessary choice, now it's not really a necessary choice. The fact that this engine looks completely separate from the motorcycle, it looks like you have a motorcycle and an engine with a life and a personality of its own that has nothing to do with the bike. I have to imagine that is a stylistic choice at this point from Harley Davidson, one that the Indian doesn't make. The engine on the Indian doesn't look like it could exist anywhere else but inside that bike. It looks so molded in, so a part of it, that I can't imagine it outside of the bike because it only looks beautiful in there, whereas you have an engine like this that looks like it could be beautiful anywhere, not just in the bike. Does that make it better or worse? Not really. Just because it can look beautiful outside of the bike, well, if you've got a bike, what does it matter? Because you're not planning on taking it outside of the bike, are you? The engine's only part of it. Let's move on to everything surrounding the engine. Obviously, the first thing that jumps out to you on any motorcycle besides the engine is the tank. For me anyway, everyone's gonna be different on that one. The Indian's tank, definitely a stylistic choice, but I think possibly also a cost-saving choice. I don't know if this also extends to gas tanks, but I know when you're creating handlebars, curved handlebars are usually more expensive to create than ones that have just sharp edges. So I don't know if it's more expensive to create a tank that has no sharp edges like a Harley Davidson has, and it's cheaper to kind of create this tank with bends in it instead of one whole piece. I don't know about that one. I think that it is. Regardless, some people are gonna like this. To me, it looks a little bit more industrial than the Harley Davidson does, which is not really my style on a motorcycle. Maybe sometimes, but I don't know. On a touring bike, industrial wouldn't be what I was going for. I'd want things to be maybe a little more whimsical than that if I'm out there exploring America. But I certainly understand its appeal, and I don't think it looks bad. It just looks more brutalist than the flowing lines of a perfectly rounded tank. And coming down from there to the frame, you'll notice something is missing, and that's the frame. I mean, it's there. It has one. It's a motorcycle. It has a frame, but there, as far as I can see, is not one single millimeter of exposed frame on this motorcycle. Now that is a stylistic choice, but a stylistic choice made from not making sure the frame is what we'll call beautiful. So if your frame doesn't look good, you don't want anybody to see it. That's why they have all these little plastic covers on there. Once again, that reminds me of a gold wing. A gold wing is completely covered up. You can't see anything. It's covered by engine covers and frame covers and plastic, and this has the same thing where you would see the frame in the front, and back here on a Harley Davidson, you just have plastic covers, which kind of makes the whole engine seem sort of closed in by the bike, which certainly makes it look more futuristic, more high-tech. It makes it look more reliable and modern. If you like that, that's a good thing. But it's definitely a stylistic choice. I would say probably from not taking the time to make sure that the frame was as much of a piece of art as everything else on the motorcycle. You kind of shore that up by closing it all off and not showing you, like when you open the hood on a modern car and you don't see the engine, you just see a plastic cover on pegs that covers up all the wires and buttons and tubes and all that kind of stuff. You don't see that. You just see this clean look that's labeled with whatever your car's engine is. That's what this reminds me of, even though the engine is exposed. And it only reminds me of that because the Harley Davidson is so different. Over here on the Harley Davidson, we have, in my opinion, completely the opposite aesthetic. We have exposed frame in the front and the rear. In fact, it's so exposed and there's so little plastic, you can see completely through to the other side. There's actual light showing around the engine. There's road, kind of reinforcing that idea that the engine is this completely separate piece of machinery that can exist without the motorcycle. They're not a whole unit. The engine is the star. The engine is important, and the motorcycle is an afterthought that's built around it, whereas on the Indian, everything seems to be built together. Everything works together as a whole, and this is more independent. It gives the motor more import, more regency. It allows it to be the star of the show, where the Indian, the entire thing is a star. These are two different philosophies. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but to me, they're just so visually, starkly obvious from looking at the bikes for 1 second. Again, the tank, you know, you might not see much difference, but whereas the Indian looks like a brutalist monolith, this thing looks rounded, kind of sexy. It looks aerodynamic. It looks slick and sleek. It definitely looks older. A lot of brutalist architecture now looks very old and dated, kind of like a leftover from the 1960s and 70s, like this austere architecture and brutalist stuff from then, where it was almost like a throwback. This now looks like a 1950s rocket-powered throwback, the very like googie American exceptionalism, like boom, wow, bang, Buck Rogers, fast. That's what this tank reminds me of compared to the Indian sort of like powerful industrial machine tank. Obviously the cooling fins on here are very prominent, but it needs them, so they kind of have to be there. What really also stands out to me the most, besides the exposed frame making this look, you know, much more like an old machine, like a contraption versus the Indian slickness, is the fact that not only is the transmission visible, they're calling attention to it. It says 6-speed right on the side. It has a chrome cover. They want you to know that the transmission exists right there. Now that's only possible for a couple different reasons. If we go back to the Indian, you'll see that it sort of ends right here. You have the final drive, which is covered by more plastic, looking like it doesn't even exist. You can't tell that this motor is transferring power to the wheel. The motor is just a part of the entire machine. It's not existing as this heart that's driving it forward. Again, not a good thing or a bad thing, just depends on which philosophical design style you like. But the Harley Davidson calls attention to it. This is a 6-speed transmission. It exists separately. It's its own exciting thing, once again, existing separately from the motor, even though I believe on these ones that I think they are attached. I forget how these work. It's not a complete unit construction because the primary is obviously separate, but I do believe the transmission case is part of the engine case. I digress. It is exhibited as its own entity here that drives the motorcycle and celebrated as such with a specific badge saying what it is. Over here on the B side of the engine, it's the same story. We have the primary celebrated as its own entity, given a chrome cover, very obviously a separate piece of machinery from the engine. We can see exposed linkages, which should make you think of machinery, which sounds brutalist, but here it's whimsical instead of evoking like the brutalist, no-nonsense feeling that the Indian does. Don't ask me how they pulled it off, but for some reason, seeing an exposed shift linkage here, so obviously in the open, so easy to see, not bothered to be hidden at all, once again, in fact, even celebrated by making it chrome. Instead of feeling industrial, it just feels whimsical. It feels like a throwback to a simpler time, a reminder that this is a mechanical machine and not without flaw. And speaking of that, nothing reminds me of that more than the exposed oil filter on the Harley Davidson. Certainly part design choice, but also once again celebrated, made chrome, easy to see. The very idea of an oil filter, it just evokes the idea that the engine is not perfect. It's not permanent. It needs something to help it filter the oil that makes it run. And instead of being hidden away and for you to not think about it and not think that the engine isn't perfect, it is a living, breathing machine. It isn't, it's just a machine, but makes you feel like a living, breathing machine. That fact is celebrated with a chromed, exposed oil filter. And I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, but I think that that's on purpose, nowadays anyway, and it certainly gives you a feeling when you see it nestled there right in front of the front cylinder. At first glance, looks much the same. Second glance, it couldn't be more different. We have unit construction, a primary that's very, very obviously a part of the case. No exposed shift linkages anywhere. In fact, everything's covered by plastic. And I know this is meant to make it disappear, but seeing this fan shroud back here being so prominent and the same exact gray color as the engine, it just reminds me that this is modern. It is futuristic. It's the same color as the engine. It's attached to the engine. It's right there. It is a part of it. This liquid cooling, this electronic fan has to exist for this engine to exist. Again, not necessarily a bad thing when you're trying to celebrate the engine and the rest of the bike working together in harmony as one modern unit, but definitely different from the Harley Davidson. No exposed linkages, nothing I can see that's mechanical. You know, there's so much more mechanical things exposed on the Harley Davidson, so much things that remind you that it's a gasoline and oil powered engine, whereas this looks like something from the future. But somehow the Harley Davidson is more industrial looking with whimsy than this is. Don't ask me how that happened. Coming over to the front end, we have the Indian with a lot going on, but nothing really that much going on that's outside outside of a normal motorcycle. We've got inverted forks exposed so you can see them because times have changed. Inverted forks are an upgrade that the aftermarket is doing. We have Brembo brakes. Now, normally radial mount Brembos like this, something you'd only see on a sport bike. Once again, when they became popular in the aftermarket, you had to see them on the bikes. And they had to be labeled Brembo too. The wheel to me means nothing. It looks fine, I guess. I'm really picky about wheels. I don't like the Harley wheel either. The front end looks surprised. It looks shocked. It looks like it's going fast. It's being pulled back. It looks like a skydiver whose eyes are open and its face is being kind of blown back by the wind as it goes forward. It makes the bike look like it's going fast. Obviously inspired by the Road Glide with a wide headlight, but doing its own thing with a cyclopean single headlight up there. And I don't know, some people hate it. I'm not the biggest fan of it either. Some people absolutely love it. I would say it's definitely more stylistically thought about than the Road Glides, whereas the Road Glides, I think, kind of evolved out of tradition into what it is now. This was definitely done by modern designers. This is a modern design. What's funny about all this modernity here, the upside down forks, the radial mount Brembo brakes, this, design school nightmare here. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Around all of this, you now have this Indian head, this ornament on the front of the fender, which I'm not against it. I think it's fine, but on this bike, it just stands out like a sore thumb. It looks like so out of place. I get it. It's brand recognition. They need it to be there. It looks like it's off something from the 1950s and nothing else on this bike looks like that. It really stands out and looks terrible on the bike, in my opinion. And of course, there's the fender itself. Once again, looking at a place with that Indian head on it because it's such a cut down sporty fender. It's got a jaunty little lip on the end of it back there. It's kind of small. It looks sporty. It looks custom. It's got these windowed sides and then that. All standing in front of this mass of black plastic covering the radiator here, which, there's no getting around it. It's got to be there. They just kind of tried to make it disappear. It's not celebrated. It's hidden. You don't want to think about this bike being mechanical and liquid cool. Don't think about that. Just kind of hide it away. Brush it under the carpet. Make it disappear. I think it'd be hard to celebrate this. Like, it's big and ugly. You want it to disappear. Then, of course, you have the Harley Davidson front end, dominated by the bug-eyed cars, freaking eyeballs up there. I don't hate it. I think I like it better than the Indian. I like the old ones better that were kind of flat. This one's just sort of like tucked in, curved one. I don't hate it. I like it. I think it's a really stylish front end. I think it looks good. It's just not like my most favorite fairing in the world ever. It's okay. And even the fairing itself, much less molded, much smoother than the Indians, whereas the Indian has kind of got that Dodge Ram, furrowed brow, angry look going on. This motorcycle, it has sort of a bit of an aggressive look, and I think that comes from it being undercut and kind of canted forward like this, whereas the Indian's aggressive look comes from what looks like a furrowed brow or a snarling cat or a snarling dog, which is, again, design school 101. Like, literally, the Indian's fairing looks like you just took an artificial intelligence of angry eyes, design school, and filtered it through and said, give me a motorcycle fairing, and that's what you got. It is what it is, man. It is a popular style. Lots of people like it. I just don't. The aggressiveness on this is much more understated than it is on the Indian, but just by that slightly forward Predator cant, the double eyes in the front. It does look like a Predator, much less in your face. You have the fender, this big chunk of steel here. You see that Indian ornament looks like it'd be way more at home on this fender. This fender looks like it's off a 1930s Ford, It looks like this big swooping 30s, 40s fender. It looks like it'd be just right at home with an ornament on the front. It looks so out of place on the Indian. You of course have standard forks, not upside down forks, shrouded, so they're kind of hidden away, which I'm talking all this shit about the Indian hiding stuff away, but Harley has made the design choice to hide these forks away for a very long time. And then of course behind that, nothing. You have the engine. It's completely open. You can see the frame is exposed. You have an oil cooler down there, and you have your rectifier, so you have electronics, you have liquid flowing through a radiator, but they're small. They're down towards the ground. Everything else is exposed. You can see through the frame. It's skeletal. You can see the engine. You can see these supports, chromed supports here holding up the fairing. The wheels, I don't care about. They're fine. The brakes, funny enough, are branded Harley Davidson, but they are actually Brembo brakes. More on that later, but kind of funny. All in all, even though it is very modern, kind of a more distinctively classic look on this front end. I mean, if you're an engineer, if you're a mechanic, you'll know that it's modern by plenty of things on it, but looking at it with the chrome shrouds, the engine hanging out behind it, seeing the frame coming into the front of the bike and going down from the headlight right in between there, and seeing the engine sitting there in between those forks, looks like it could be from any decade, from the 1950s to 2025. On a Harley Davidson, at least. Not a lot of other people are doing that. Coming back here to the peach, to the ass ends of the bikes, looking very similar at first blush, but look a little closer. Again, the Harley bags are Harley bags. Those are Harley bags, are Harley bags, are Harley bags. They've looked like that for a very long time. But they also look like they exist separately from the motorcycle. These bags look like they belong on this bike only because they're on a Harley Davidson. These look like Harley bags and they're on a Harley. Their design choices don't really follow anything else on the bike. Sure, they have a forward cant, but they're angled. The way that they're swept back like that doesn't look like it matches anything else on the bike. We got a little nod to that with this little ridge underneath that side cover panel that goes into the bag there, but they only look like they belong on this bike because we associate them with being Harley Davidson bags. So yeah, they look like they belong on here, but in reality, these exist almost completely separately from the bike in every way. They do not go with it. And I believe that this comes from a time when bags didn't come on motorcycles. Bags were an option. It's something you added afterwards, and when you added them from Harley Davidson, this is what they looked like. They used to be a lot smaller than this, but on any bike you got them on, this is what the Harley Davidson bags looked like. They also opened a lot differently, but that's besides the point. Going over the Indian, you might say, oh, these look the same, but to me, they barely look the same at all. And that's mostly to do with the fact that they look like they're part of the bike. They look like they were designed with this motorcycle. Follow the curves of the rear fender, just everything about them, from looking at the tank to going and looking at the top of this bag. They look like they were designed by the same team, which I assume that they were. I could certainly complain about the ugly rubber bumper down there, or the fact that there's a keyhole exposed up here. Not really a big fan of that. I think it's kind of ugly, but we're getting a little nitpicky at that point. I think the main thing I want to say is that these bags go with this motorcycle. Again, is that a good thing? That's up to you. But it doesn't look like the motorcycle's meant to be viewed without these bags. They are part of it. Now, I will point out that even though they're part of it, there's very obviously a gap here. I think that's probably a manufacturing choice for cost. Whereas on the Harley Davidson, even though the bag's design does not go with the bike, they were designed separately from this motorcycle, or at least inspired by a design that had nothing to do with this bike. We do have a rear fender that fills in those gaps and make them look like they're more part of the bike than they aren't. And these bikes don't look good if you just take the bags off, but they look like they would. They look like they could look good if the bags were removed, like they weren't designed with the bags in mind, even though they were. Very much a contradiction between these two motorcycles and their design choices. And whether you good thing, bad thing, and which one you like, or whether it even matters, well, that's completely up to you. Once again, the Indian very much reminds me of a Honda Goldwing, in so much that these bags were designed with the motorcycle in mind and designed to be a part of the bike. That is very much a metric thing, very much a Goldwing thing, very much a Japanese touring motorcycle element to this bike that just isn't existing on the Harley. It doesn't exist on that bike. This feels and looks and is designed like a metric motorcycle. Now, if you want me to say that more kindly, just switch out the word metric with modern. So this is designed like a modern motorcycle, and the Harley isn't. And coming into what you see, let's talk about the gauge clusters and the inside of these two fairings here. I think that the first one that jumps out to me is the fact that the Harley Davidson has these dial gauges right underneath their infotainment center. I hate saying that, what a stupid name. But it's obviously meant to convey the fact that the gauges are what's important. Speed, RPM, what your engine is doing, and everything above it, your directions, your radio, all your little facts and figures and numbers on the screen, that is secondus. This is primus. the engine, the dials, and mechanical stuff is number one, and you have much the opposite design on the Indian, where you still do have dials. They're recessed. They look like the dials on a car, not on a motorcycle. They're under the shrouded hood, and they are above the infotainment, if that's what they call it, digital display down here. You have an LCD display, or whatever it is, TFT, and it very much is prominent and takes way more of a primary feature in your vision and how you're feeling about the bike and everything you see over these mechanical gauges, which on this bike feel like an afterthought versus the technology of this TFT screen. And again, just complete opposites on bikes that kind of at first glance look the same, but to me evoke very, very different emotions when I look at them. That's about where I'm going to leave it with the elements of designs on these two bikes, because that's only a fraction of what I feel about something at first blush, my knee-jerk reaction, what emotion something makes me feel, what kind of artistic experience I have from motorcycles and motorcycles as art. The primary thing is the primary thing that they were built to do, hopefully, which is ride. So let's throw a leg over these things and see what I feel. Age before beauty, though I guess the beauty part's subjective. Anyway, age before beauty, we'll do the Harley Davidson first. It should get first go around. It's defending its title after all. Immediately we go to the big thunking mechanical to turn it on. Yes, there is Bluetooth. Yes, there is a key fob. Yes, this is full of wires, but when you turn it on, even though there are a series of circuit boards going off, there's a big solid thunk. Just this big solid thunk of this ignition right here, turning it on. You do something mechanical with this big piece of metal right here to start your ride. It's very different from the Indian, and I like it a lot. I hope Harley Davidson never loses that, though I assume at some point they will. Having to accept all my warnings up here just immediately takes me out of it. I hate it. All right, sitting down on, it's comfortable. It's a cruiser, of course. The white face gauges directly there on the handlebars. Everything is exposed. I can see the road, even though I have a fixed fairing up here. I can see the concrete in front of me. Starting it up, I can feel that engine rocking back and forth in its rubber mounts, and as it sort of coughs to life. It feels like starting up an airplane with a shotgun shell. It thunks into gear. Like, everything about this feels large. It feels a bit unstoppable. Nothing's fast, nothing's quick. It feels inexorable. The inexorability translates through as soon as you start riding too, with this big fairing, sort of high, canted back. This swooping feeling back here gives me the same emotion that the front does of it sort of canting back and leaning forward. It makes me feel like it's the prow of a ship and I'm standing up there, a captain, one knee up, drunk on rum, ready to sail the seven seas. I'm not trying to suck the bike's dick here. I'm just kind of firing off my knee-jerk emotions on how it makes me feel. I can feel the engine rumbling and moving and hear the exhaust, and it feels alive underneath there. It feels like a modern motorcycle. This is a newer bike. It's got 7,500 miles on it. So yeah, it feels like a modern bike. And there's a bit of falseness there too, I'll say, to this motorcycle. Just that small niggling reminder that, like, oh, you know what that is, ride-by-wire. It is fuel injected, I can tell. Oh my gosh, it does have ABS and all of this electronics, and it's telling me I got low fuel. So these emotions that I feel of being like a captain on the front of a ship and everything feeling grand and majestic, it does feel like I'm kind of getting taken for a ride, but it works so well and the motorcycle rides so well. Now, you can talk all the crap you want about Harleys being, old and outdated. This is thoroughly a modern motorcycle. Not every single thing on it, but it is a modern bike and it rides like one. Whether you like that or not is up to you. To me, there's a slight aftertaste of being fooled, of falseness, of buying a modern classic when you get on this bike, but it's so good and it rides so well and it makes all the right noises and it thunks and clunks and makes cool motorcycle sounds that it's a pretty easy aftertaste to ignore, I'll say. Again, I get that feeling of everything feeling separate on the bike. I don't know if that's a specific design element or if it's just something that was forced upon Harley Davidson by having to operate within the bounds of tradition. Sitting on the bike, holding the handlebars, I feel like the the fairing is separate from the motorcycle. I feel like it's its own entity up there. It reminds me, as I said, the figurehead on a ship. I can see almost nothing holding it up down here. When I look down at the fairing, it looks like it's almost just floating there. Now I know if I look down there, I can see fender supports, but it in no way looks like it's attached to the gas tank. I don't see any wires. It feels like its own separate thing up there, that it could exist outside of the motorcycle, tying in with the primary and the transmission and the engines and the bag, where all of these things feel like their own individual ideas that have somehow been glued together in this chimera to make a motorcycle that somehow all works together, even though so many of them follow different design philosophies. It really is neat, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with just culturally, I am an American, so culturally, there's a small bit there. There's a little aftertaste that tells me that, this ain't Coca-Cola, this ain't the real thing. This is reformulated. This is made to look like the real thing, but it most assuredly is not. It's doing a damn good job, and if you're not paying attention whatsoever, and you're not thinking about it, and I certainly don't think about it all the time, if you're not thinking about it, you'd never notice that it wasn't the real thing. And that's its own special kind of magic. I think that the engineers and the designers have absolutely done their best. For people who say, oh, no engineering, no design, just the same old shit. The fact that they've been able to take all this modern stuff and craft it in such a way that it still evokes more imagery of everything Harley Davidson was than any other car manufacturer and motorcycle manufacturer out there, in my opinion, while still being thoroughly modern and still looking disparate, but working together somehow. Again, if you could bottle that magic and sell it, you would be a freaking billionaire. The Milwaukee 8, especially, I think this is a 107. I'm not sure though. It could be a 114. It has an air filter, some exhaust. They have like this great grunt, like right off the line. They feel just powerful, like they could never be stopped, and then just kind of signs off really early at the rev limiter, which is fine. Yeah, right there. You bounce off that rev limiter. It feels like it cuts in way too early. It just feels like the bike isn't done. It might be done, but it feels like it isn't. I don't know. It's like getting your dessert and not getting your meat. It's just like, here's that one special treat you like. Here's your candy. Now, don't ask for anything that actually that is actually going to nourish you. No, you can't have that. But candy? That sweet torque right off the line, you can have as much of that as you want. That's the Milwaukee 8 in a nutshell to me. Now, they can be modified where they give you everything across the entire power band, but right out of the gate, even with like a stage 1, they're all candy, all sweet, nothing but dessert, and not as much meat on the bone as they would have you think. It's like somebody sitting down a big old porterhouse right in front of you, a big old on-the-bone ribeye, and you cut into that juicy thing, and it's cake. You're like, oh, okay, it's not actually meat, it's cake. And the cake's still gonna taste good. It's still gonna be really delicious. But it's not quite steak, is it? Now, if you're willing to spend a few dollars, trust me, you can turn that porterhouse cake into a big juicy cut of meat. And these bikes will give you every single thing you want and more. The Milwaukee 8, people call it disposable. I guess in some ways it is. But this motor is capable of really big horsepower numbers. It's impressive. From an air-cooled motor, it is really impressive. All right, let me park this thing and start thinking up what kind of food metaphors I'm going to use for the Indian. Hey man, I'm 300 all-American pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal, all right? Of course I'm going to use food metaphors. I ain't had lunch yet. Give me a break. And the Indian. Still a very handsome cockpit, I will say. Again, with this TFT directly in your face there. A little high tech for me. I even wish the Harley Davidson didn't have the TFT. I don't need it, don't want it. And it's definitely the focus here over your dials. Swing a leg over it, it's of course comfortable. I'm not crazy about these grips, but that's just me. The real difference is looking here in front of you. I don't like this. This is this black plastic here where some people don't like chrome, and I guess you could definitely argue on the Harley that that big chrome gas cap cover blinds you in certain sunlight, but I don't know, this just in a bike that hides everything, this exposed Allen right here, and this whole thing feels cheap compared to everything else. Everything else looks expensive. Turning it on, no thunk, no clunk, just a button that's not even a real button. It's not even doing anything mechanical back there. It's pressing on a pressure, I guess it is somewhat mechanical. It's pressing on a pressure sensitive circuit board, and it doesn't click. I don't like that. It doesn't click. Like, come on, man. There's a smallest click for the off right there, but to turn it on, you have a fob, of course, but instead of this big clunking thunk that you twist on the Harley Davidson, you gently press a button that doesn't click. To me, very unsatisfying, and it makes the bike seem futuristic in a way that I don't enjoy. And then instead of pressing a button and starting it up like it's an airplane with a shotgun shell, you press the button and it goes through its starting cycle all on its own through the computer. That I don't like. It makes me feel out of control of the motorcycle. It makes me feel like I'm not the master of my own ship, but I understand why they do it. Just like this entire motorcycle was designed together. It was all designed as one. It's designed to inspire confidence, to not let you see all the mechanical stuff working that could fail, to look like an iPhone almost, with no exposed frame or electronics. Very futuristic, very confidence inspiring. That's the same thing. You press that button, it starts itself. The bike's telling you, hey, don't worry, I got this. I don't need anything from you except to be ridden. And everything else, I got it. Don't worry about it. But in a world where, entropy is the only absolute, we know that you don't always got it. All right, about the same, 8,500 miles on this. Something about these Indian throttles, man. Their ride-by-wire just makes me feel weird and disconnected. I think maybe they need to put a heavier spring in it. and a flame out. So let's restart this again. Might have been partially my fault. I'll take some responsibility, just not much, okay? All right, fuel injection flame out. Regardless, their throttle, it feels like if it was a throttle on a regular bike, it feels like the throttle cable is broken. I still get a little bit of that separation from the fairing and me, but it definitely feels more like a part of the motorcycle than the Harley Davidson does. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is completely up to you. And the engine just going forward, I can feel it moving. I can feel it thumping. It's got a beat. I can dance to it. It just feels like it's thumping and moving because it's large. It doesn't feel like it's actually moving down there because it isn't. It's a solidly mounted engine with a counterbalancer. It's balanced. It's not moving. And that makes it, to me, feel, if you were saying it nice, you would say it feels better. It feels nicer. It feels smoother and slicker and more polished than the Harley Davidson does. All those things are true. Now, if I was going to argue positively towards the Harley Davidson, I'd say it feels less alive. It feels more manufactured. Yeah, that could give you feelings of safety. Getting on this, I feel it. I go, okay, my initial feeling is this isn't going to break down. It isn't going to stop working. It feels very Goldwing-esque, where this is just going to go forever and without any input from me. I won't have to do anything. The bike's got it. Don't worry about it. All you got to do is ride it. That's the emotion I get from this. But knowing what I do about motorcycles, unfortunately, all I can think about is the fact that that's not true, sir. The test results have come back. You are not the father. They have shown that to be a lie. Another flame out. That's crazy. I wonder if that's a common thing in Indians. I just don't know. Anyway, regardless, we won't take it into account. Makes a great sound, accelerates really powerfully. It just feels more car-like than it does motorcycle. It feels like a Charger or a Challenger with a V8 engine. Oh, Challenger makes sense. Maybe it's just the name making me think of Dodge and Challenger with a big V8 that surges forward. Even in this tank right here, it's sort of springing up and forward. So we're all susceptible to stuff like that. It makes me go in my head like, hey, how susceptible am I just to a name? Where I say the Challenger name and I get on the motorcycle and I'm immediately made to think of a V8 car. It happens to all of us, which is why I think that this stuff, the philosophical feelings and the emotions that a motorcycle make you feel, I think are just as important, if not more important, than all the stats and sheets and specs and facts and figures and measurements. I think that the emotions are just as, if not more important. That's why I always talk about those, because I feel like not enough people do. And some people say I talk it to death, but I'm also a firm believer that recognizing, exploring, touching, and feeling an emotion, or how art makes you feel, everything inside when you look at something, giving it name, categorizing it, talking about it, to me, it does not make the feeling less so. For some people it does. They go like, I don't want to quantify art and why it makes me feel the way I do, because that ruins the magic. For me, it doesn't. For me, it enhances it. It makes me like it more. Knowing why I like something, knowing what stylistic design choices, why it makes me feel certain emotions, knowing that makes me enjoy them more. Not everybody's me, so I can understand if you don't like that and it ruins the magic for you. It definitely feels more solid than the Harley. The whole package feels like one piece, feels like one thing, whereas the Harley feels like this amalgamation of different ideas and designs and philosophies. This feels more purposeful, feels more driven. It feels like it was created to achieve something more than the Harley Davidson does. Which again, can make it feel a little more sterile, a little more clinical. But sterile and clinical inspire confidence. And I don't know if those were specific design choices by the Polaris team. And I don't even know if eschewing those was even specifically chosen by Harley Davidson. They just are. Regardless of anything else, and sterile and clinical, I mean, I use those words, but obviously when you twist the throttle, it's not a sterile or clinical motorcycle. This thing is rowdy. Don't get it twisted. Just because I use the words doesn't mean that's all it is. Flameouts were kind of interesting. Now I'm like kind of nervous about them, which I assume is from it just running like crazy lean, having too much air in the system or something. I don't know. I've been on plenty of bikes that are designed for Euro spec emissions that do that flameout thing. It's really common, especially on smaller CC engines like dirt bikes and dual sports and stuff. And it's funny, even just like the cadence of the idle feels different, where the Harley Davidson feels almost arrhythmatic. It's got a beat, a cadence to it that feels a little wilder, a little freer, and the Indian feels, again, a little more manufactured. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that this isn't wild and free and exciting. It just means that it feels a little more clinical. It feels a little more machine-like. If you knew how to make something that those differences, like you could make it not feel machine-like and still be a modern design, sometimes I think that's still happening to Harley purely on accident. Because obviously if they could make it do all those things, they would. BMW certainly tried, which is so funny. Very German of them, very German, to put the rock and roll mode on their bike, where it's faster and shakes more and is more aggressive. The most German thing I can think of to be like, oh, so you want some soul? So you want some heart? Just press the button and we'll electronically give you some soul and heart and character. I love all my Germans and I love BMWs, but you gotta admit that is hilarious. Press the button and get your government-approved dosage of character and soul. Like, come on, guys. But then I ride this bike and I find myself wishing it had a rock and roll button, because I would have pressed it already. I can't shake the feeling. It's not a bad thing, because I love gold wings, but this bike reminds me more of a gold wing than it does a Harley Davidson, which is just gonna piss off everybody, especially gold wing owners. But it does. It feels like a purpose-built machine. It feels like it's all been engineered completely together to do one thing, and not let you in on any of the little secrets going on underneath the hood and behind the plastic. Just don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna run forever. Confidence. Don't worry about it. That's what it feels like to me. Personally, I usually skew towards a little more danger in my life than that, but take that with a grain of salt, because I love my gold wings. I own a gold wing that is one of my favorite bikes I've ever had in the world. I don't know. Such is the duality of man. What do you want from me? Now you might be asking yourself, and probably rightfully so, isn't this video titled How Indian Won, How They Beat Harley Davidson? Because I'm certain all the Harley haters are gonna say I've been doing nothing but gobbling Harley's knob, talking about how good that bike is. How can the Indian have won this? Now personally, I think that I am just describing describing my emotions when I look at two different bikes, and what I feel about a bike doesn't make it better. That's kind of the whole point, is you can feel these emotions too. You can explore how you feel about a motorcycle. That doesn't make it better than somebody else's. It's a personal experience, and nothing I feel like I said about the Indian was that bad. It's all can be said in a very good way. Same thing with the Harley. But I will still say that Indian has definitely won. And they haven't won against that bike, even though we're not counting a winner here. Just two different bikes that do things two very different ways. No, Indian won with the motorcycle that came after that bike. This is the Harley that very, very loudly, in my opinion, declares Indian the winner. Yes, it's still a road glide, in name anyway, although besides the fact that it's got a Milwaukee 8 engine, it's hard to look at this and see much in common with the bike that it replaced at all. For better or for worse, what I see when I look at this bike is I see Harley Davidson's answer to the Indian Challenger. It seems to me like they threw the punch on the back foot. This is in response to Indian, not beating them. This bike tells everyone Indian won. Even though it's a great bike, it's a little embarrassing. That's fine. Doesn't mean it's a bad motorcycle. It just is very obviously inspired by, not inspiring. Oh, while Harley Davidson has still got the big Milwaukee 8 down there, coming up to the other most prominent thing on a bike, the tank, we'll see gone is the Googie architecture 1950s Rocket Man tank on the previous Road Glide, and in its place is a curved, flat-lined, much more brutalist tank that, I don't know. Who does that remind you of? You tell me. What does that remind you of over there? Because looking at this tank, looking at these hard angles, looking at its squared off appearance, yeah, I'll tell you who it doesn't remind me of. It doesn't remind me of this tank at all. The only thing I find in common between this tank and the one on the new bike is the fact that they say Harley Davidson on the side. On this model, we're keeping the Harley branded Brembos and the regular shrouded forks. If you go up to the CVO, it has upside down forks and Brembo branded brakes, but I didn't figure it was fair to compare a CVO to this bike. Just a little farther backwards though, and the proud chrome supports that were holding up the fairing on the previous Road Glide before this are gone in favor of disappearing black. We have a low crash bar that has nothing to do with supporting the fairing. Going into the frame, you can still see parts of it, but it's starting to disappear, and it's starting to disappear behind a whole lot of plastic and cooling equipment. You can't see anywhere near as much of it. We have plastic things holding on clutch cables. We have our oil cooler and our giant rectifier, and standing in front of the bike, you can't really see much engine anymore, can you? All in the name of progress, right? Is that a good thing? Is this bottle blocking my view of the frame over here? Is this progress? Is this a good thing? Is it beautiful? Does it make you happy when you see it? It doesn't for me. A sportier chopped down fender, gone is the subtle predatory aggression of the fairing, the previous Road Glide fairing, and in its place is yet another molded, angry eye, aggressive snake's head, cat's head, snarling dog, furrowed brow of a fairing. And I just gotta say, I think they dropped the ball on it. And I think a lot of it exists right here in this lip right here. I don't think that lip was a good choice. It looks quivering. It looks like a weak chin. I don't know why it does, but it doesn't lend it any sort of aggression. It just looks like a baby's pouting lip stuck up, and it doesn't make the entire thing look angry. It makes it look like somebody who's angry, and they're angry about not getting something they want, which again makes Indian look like the winner. Everything about the fairing is just making concessions to being futuristic for no reason at all. Like this cut right here, this design element, it looks like somebody made this choice for you, which of course they did, but this entire headlight, these cutouts, these swoops and curves, they just weren't needed. They're all here to evoke newness. They're here to evoke the emotion of, oh, this is new, this is modern, this is not the old Harley, this is the new Harley. Again, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing to have that that emotion evoked in you is completely up to you. A lot of people want the new stuff. People say Harleys are old, I want them to be new. Well, here you go. This is new. This looks like a modern design. Even though the old fairing was a completely modern fairing with headlights just as good as this, like it was a modern fairing. This is a modern design on this fairing. Whether you like that or not is up to you. Personally, I'm not crazy about it because you didn't need to tell me that it was modern. You could just make it modern without doing all these swoops and this weak little quivering lip right here. Not a fan of that one. Once again, in the back, we've gone from bags that look like they could exist separately, that look like Harley bags, to bags that look like they used to be Harley bags, but are designed with this motorcycle in mind. Just like the Indian, we have gone with bags that were made for this bike with this bike style in mind. This bike was styled and designed, imagined all together. Everything about it works together. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We have this flat line right here on the bag, this flat curve on the side of the bag that never existed on the old ones, that goes into this flat line on the tank versus the rounded tank on the old bike, that goes directly into this crease on your angry pouting fairing up here. You know, it all kind of flows together and works together. It just feels like design 101. It doesn't feel inspired to me. It does feel modern. It looks like a modern design. To me, it looks like everything else out there. It looks like every car and every truck and everything else that has a modern design because everybody's pulling from the same place. It doesn't look like a chimera. It doesn't look like amalgamation. It looks like a bike that was designed as one single piece. Like it was just injection molded all together, all at once, which the Indian looks like that too. It's not weird. A lot of bikes look like that. A lot of cars look like that. It's a modern design choice. And saddest of all, we lose our mechanical functions. We lose our big clunky switches. We lose even our vestigial gauges here on the Indian. And we have, once again, complete modernity. We have no gauges. We have a flat screen TV. You could watch the Super Bowl up here. We have no big thunking, clunking switch, big chrome obelisk of a switch to turn on our motorcycle. We have nothing but buttons. Buttons that don't click. They're clean, they're modern, they inspire confidence like they're supposed to. But I don't recall asking for a Nintendo controller on my motorcycle. Everywhere I look on this bike, it just screams that Indian won. Indian made their bike, they made the Challenger, and they won. The proof is in the pudding. Let's take this bike for a ride and see essentially the same engine, how different it actually feels from the previous iteration. Because looking at it, well, people keep saying that Harley's stuck in the past. People keep saying Harley needs to update their stuff and stop selling yesterday's technology at tomorrow's prices. Well, if you don't like it, I'll tell you this. Just be careful of what you wish for, all right? It is crazy how much this feels exactly like the Indian. You know, gone are the built-in speakers and the big swooping bright plastic, and in its place is this. Gone is all the big chrome. You can get these in chrome, but I don't know. It just feels kind of empty, doesn't it? Especially without any gauges. This big flat screen TV up there. It's not for me. It just looks like something that could break. I know it's supposed to inspire confidence. I know it's supposed to make you think futuristic. We're better than Indian. Indian still has gauges. We're better than them. We only have the flat screen TV. Well, it doesn't make me feel like that. I look at that and I see a very expensive part that one day is going to break. And I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like turning my bike on with a little button that doesn't click, or at least it doesn't make a satisfying click. I don't like not starting it by holding it down, instead by the motorcycle deciding with its circuit boards exactly how it's going to start. Once again, it just tells me that Indian won. All the engines are counterbalanced, even the rubber mounted ones. Well, with this one, you can definitely tell it's counterbalanced. There's no doubt it feels more powerful than the previous one. The 117 versus the 107 or 114, what was ever in the other one. obviously it's more powerful. And you can tell, you can feel it. It feels much faster. Everything feels lighter. It just feels more nimble. It feels hundreds of pounds lighter. No, it's not hundreds of pounds lighter, but it feels like it. It feels, I don't know if this is because of the counterbalance or not, but it feels like the engine has less rotating mass. It's a bigger engine, only by a few cubic inches, but it shouldn't feel that way. It just feels like the entire thing revs a little faster. There's just less gravity there, and when the engine turns over and when you twist the throttle. So while it does feel faster, I will tell you, it doesn't feel as commanding as the previous one does, and it feels it feels just like the Challenger. So much like the Challenger, it's not even funny. Not crazy about the design choices they made here, and I don't like damn flat screen TV up there. I don't know. It just feels shortened. It doesn't feel as grand. It doesn't feel like you're riding this throwback. Now, I did say when I was on the Harley, riding that classic, riding that throwback, it feels a little contrived. There's this small aftertaste saying that, hey, you're riding something that's designed specifically to evoke these emotions in you. Kind of fires off that prey response of going like, oh my gosh, there's a beautiful woman here beckoning me into the woods. Is there a large human-eating plant monster, holding her up like a puppet behind it? Like, there's just a sort of prey response to being like, I'm being tricked. I'm being tricked right now. That is non-existent here. This thoroughly feels like a modern motorcycle. Nothing about this feels old. Nothing about this feels like a throwback. Nothing about this tickles any sort of whimsy or nostalgia. And even though that nostalgia on the previous one is false, if you liked it, I'm telling you, it's gone. It's not there anymore. They have surgically removed all nostalgia from the new road glides. It's like that movie trope where you have the robot, the quirky robot with lots of character who was just learning to love, inspired by humans. He's almost human himself, but he's still definitely a robot, but he's almost human. He has a personality, and then, like, for whatever the plot devices that he has to go through some reprogramming, and now it's just beep, boop, beep, 101, and nothing, no soul, no character, no spark of life behind those dead flat eyes. I'm not trying to talk too much shit, but that's what this bike feels like. It feels like the funny, quirky robot who wasn't really perfect, but it seemed almost human, has just gone through re-education and is now a lean, mean killing machine. Thoroughly modern. But if you ask anybody, that's what everybody said. Trust me, I've been making YouTube videos, shit about Harleys. I've said good things about Harley and every other motorcycle manufacturer on the frickin' planet. But 18 years making YouTube videos and 14, 15 years of specifically making motorcycle videos, I have heard everybody and their brother for the past decade cry about how Harley Davidson doesn't make modern bikes. Everybody screams it from the mountaintops. They don't make modern motorcycles. Their bikes feel old. Well, here you go. This bike doesn't feel old. It doesn't feel old in the slightest. This is a modern bike. It's a great bike. It feels good. I feel confident on it. I feel the same confidence on this that I felt on the Indian. I feel like this motorcycle is just going to work, and it doesn't need any input from me except to ride it. It doesn't feel like it needs me to tell it good morning. It doesn't feel like it needs a kiss good night. It doesn't feel like it needs a hug after a hard day. It doesn't feel like it wants to go get a beer with me after doing battle through the mountains. It doesn't feel like it has blood or sweat or any of those things. And yes, I'm well aware that the previous iteration had none of those as well. It was just a machine, but somehow, some way, it felt like it had all of those things, and they have been wiped clean from this bike. This is a thoroughly modern motorcycle, and this is what everybody asked for. And it's a really good bike. Is this what you wanted? Is this what you wanted Harley Davidson to do? I really don't know, because I think that most of the people screaming from the mountaintops that Harley Davidson needed to make modern bikes and all their stuff was old, they never wanted one anyway, which is fine. They make a lot of different brands of bike. I didn't even want the previous generation. It wasn't even for me. Like, I was not looking at they never wanted one anyway, which is fine. They make a lot of different brands of bike. I didn't even want the previous generation. It wasn't even for me. Like, I was not looking at a newer Milwaukee 8 Road Glide, so I'm among them. Of course, I wasn't saying they needed to make them modern, but I had no intention of buying a Milwaukee 8 Road Glide. None whatsoever. I just feel like a lot of the people yelling the loudest just didn't care at all. I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know. I will tell you that I've just years and years of reading hundreds of thousands of comments. That was the battle cry. That's what everybody wanted. You got it. It's here. It's arrived. And it's awesome. You know? The school of design, I think, is just so freaking derivative. It just looks like everything else. Like the thing looks like a big orange suppository, like every other goddamn car and motorcycle on the road covered in plastic. Obviously, I'm in the minority because that's what every car looks like. I guess people like that, whatever. They're not making it for me specifically. I'm not even in the market for one. Outside of that, this bike rules. It's awesome. It's fast. It's confidence inspiring. I really enjoy riding it. I like it a lot. I'm just pointing out that if you like your robot to pretend to be human, if you want your robot companion one day in the future to do its best imitation of trying to be human and trying to love and make mistakes and experience anger and jealousy and bitterness and hopes and dreams, if you want your robot to emulate those things, this does not. This is a modern robot that will do the job you ask of it with no muss, no fuss, no talking back, no quippy jokes at the end of it. This is a robot whose programming has 100% erased its human foibles. I wouldn't worry too much. There's still plenty of old bikes out there. Tons of previous generations. Hell, man, there's still freaking shovel heads and pan heads, and you can just go buy a new shovel head motor from S&S and a frame from Palco and build your own damn bike if you want to. Just because Harley Davidson isn't making it doesn't mean that you can't have it. It exists. You can still get it, whether it's just an old one that's still out there or whether you build it yourself from parts that are manufactured today. So don't cry about it. I'm not crying about it. I'm not sad. This doesn't make me sad. I'm just pointing out how it makes me feel. And the feeling isn't sadness. All the things I'm saying are definitely matter of fact. These are just one person's emotions when they get on these bikes, they look on these bikes, they ride these bikes. That's how I feel. It doesn't mean it has to be yours, and it doesn't mean that I think you suck if you have one of these bikes. I think it would be ridiculous of me to make a YouTube video and not share my opinion. If you make YouTube videos and you're like, I don't have an opinion, everything is great, then that's pretty boring. Why would I watch that? I'm just letting you know that my opinion is mine, and you're more than welcome to critique it in the comments down below. I'm not saying it's perfect. In the grand scheme of things, my opinion is worth no more or no less than yours, but that's just in the grand scheme of things. My opinion to me is worth a lot, but that's to me, and just because it's worth a lot to me doesn't mean it has to be worth a lot to you. It's all about relativity, am I right? If opinions are like assholes, and everybody's got one, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. The only opinion I'm going to care about besides my own is one on the back of a pretty girl who's letting me stick my pecker into it, okay? Yours don't make the cut. All right, team, that's gonna about do it for this one. I know I hit rambling speed pretty hard there, but I am who I am. A tiger can't change its stripes, and I make zero apologies. Huge thanks to Burt's Barracuda and all Burt's stores for letting me film here and not always say the nicest things about the bikes he sells. I will say they're all good bikes, and if I had to buy a bike from somewhere, if I was in the market for a new bike, it'd be from Burt's. Don't forget to subscribe, leave the video a like, leave me a comment down below. Until next time, y'all, keep it weird.
Crashing through the sky comes a fearful cry. Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Armies of the night, evil taking flight. Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Panic spreading far and wide. Can the world oppose the deadliest of foes? Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Who will risk it all to end the evil call of Shade Tree? Army. Shade Tree, army. They never give up, they never say die, walking tall with banners high. Shade Tree Army, a ruthless gang of scum, villains, freaks, and bikers determined to rule the world.